light from the sun, or Nabuwa is divided into two types. One is dhati, essential prophethood, and one is what? Attained prophethood. Meaning, all the prophets attain their light from the light of the Prophet ﷺ. Outwardly, this interpretation seems fine. Outwardly, to the layperson. But someone with deep understanding will know this contradicts Al-Quran Al-Kareem. لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله. That we do not make a distinction between what? Any one of the messengers. What does this mean? That Nabuwa is dhati in every prophet. And every prophet essentially is a prophet. Why did they need to forward a theory that every prophet attains his prophethood from the Prophet ﷺ? Because when a claimant of prophethood appears, he can say, I received this prophethood from the Prophet ﷺ. Like claimants today, which I will move on to in the third segment, why these types of groups appear. So this is a summary of what Khatmun Nabuwa is. Finality of prophethood. That there is no prophet after the Prophet ﷺ. It does not involve time in the sense that some people say, after what I mean by this, they say, after the time of the Prophet ﷺ, these deviant people, they say, a prophet can appear. The answer is no. After the time of the Prophet ﷺ, no new prophet can appear. He is the finality of prophets. And this is the meaning of Khatmun Nabuwa. How do they violate this and negate this? By claiming that what they call dhilli prophet. What does a dhilli prophet mean? A shadow prophet appears. They say the real prophet is the Prophet ﷺ, but the current prophet is a shadow. All these concepts are falsified and contradict al-aqlu wal-naqlu. What do I mean by al-aqlu wal-naqlu? The rational faculty and the texts of the Quran and the Sunnah. So this is with regard to what Khatmun Nabuwa means and entails. The second part, what I wanted to touch upon. And remember, write down your questions or have your questions prepared for any one of these segments. So if you have a question regarding the first segment, write down your question, or at the end of the lecture, place your hand up and inshallah I will attempt to answer your question. The second segment is a short history of claimants of being Mahdi. So you have claimants of prophethood, but then you have claimants of Mahdiism. You see, there are levels of a messianic complex. The messianic complex is an actual mental illness that psychiatrists recognize. It's a real mental illness. It can start from claims of being a messiah, but because people have seen the reaction to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani, they would want to be more careful. So they move on to Mahdiism. And then from Mahdiism, if they cannot claim Mahdiism, they will claim Mujaddidism. These are the three stages. Mahdiism is the second stage. Mujaddidism, meaning claiming you are a Mujaddid, is not as bad as claiming that you are al-Mahdi. But even Mujaddidism is never manufactured and engineered. You cannot engineer being a Mujaddid. Meaning in today's day and age with social media, people think they can manufacture a personality for social media. But man arda an-nasa bi sakhati Allah yuwakkiluhu Allah ila an-nas. Whoever tries pleasing people with the anger of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will leave him to the people. So the person should never try to please people, he should attempt to please Allah. Man arda Allah bi sakhati an-nas kafahu Allahu ma'unat an-nas. That whoever pleases Allah with the anger of the people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will suffice him regarding the people. So the messianic complex develops from claims of prophethood to Mahdiism. And Imam Muhammad bin Abdul Rasul al-Barzanji, rahimallahu ta'ala, the author of al-Isha'a, لأشراط الساعة, the most comprehensive book on Ashrat al-Sa'a, or I would say one of the best composed books on Ashrat al-Sa'a. He mentioned some examples of a person from the Kurdish areas, a man from the Kurdish areas who had delusions of being al-Mahdi. And then the Sultan, meaning in the Ad-Dawlatul Uthmaniyya, they brought him in, they questioned him, interrogated him, and then he repented. When he repented, some of the people said secretly he still believed he was al-Mahdi. This can be psychotic illness in some cases, which has happened. There was a person here in Birmingham in 2004. He claimed to be al-Mahdi. And then he went to Umrah. He went to Makkah al-Mukarramah. He cut his passport. And he stayed in Makkah al-Mukarramah. He would perform the tawaf. And he would hide away. And then when in the house in the mountains, in those days they had mountains in Makkah al-Mukarramah. And then he would descend and perform the tawaf and then go back. The authorities caught him. And because he had cut his passport, they thought he was Somalian. So they sent him to Somalia. And then from Somalia, he took a boat to Yemen. When he reached Yemen, I think you remember the incident. He reached Yemen, and this yes, I remember now. He was in the Hajj group. So this affirms my story. Yes? So, and he went to Yemen, and then in Yemen, he was imprisoned by the Yemeni authorities, and then they found out he was British, so they issued a British passport, and he came back. I think that fixed him slightly, because he never claimed to be al-Mahdi after that. But the delusions were such that in a debate with him, meaning in my history I've had debates. Remember, now we have social media, and some of the debates are recorded. I think Sufi Ahmed Sahib, you will say the debates we had in those days were more classical, meaning if they were recorded, I debated this Mahdi claimant as well, and he actually believed the sun was following him. Now, if he was a mental health patient, he would have continued claiming to be al-Mahdi. Remember, I'm not discussing actual mental health patients, because you meet actual mental health patients. This is someone who is sane in his daily life, in everything else. Just in the delusion of being al-Mahdi, he is insane. But likewise, you have people who will have other messianic complexes. Of course, you must read up on narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, which develops with people, especially if they reach fame or public recognition, waliyadu billah. So, Imam al-Barzanji mentions some claimants of being al-Mahdi. But you must have heard of a book called Kanzul Ummal in Hadith. Kanzul Ummal in Hadith. The author is Imam al-Muttaqi al-Hindi, rahimahullah ta'ala. This book was the book was composed by Imam Jalaluddin Abdul Rahman al-Suyuti, who passed away in 911. He wrote Al-Jami al-Saghir, and then he was attempting to compile all the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and he passed away. Al-Imam al-Muttaqi al-Hindi came and he completed the work, and he named the work Kanzul Ummal. Initially he came from India, and in India he had a Shaykh, a guide, a spiritual guide, who became misguided. The spiritual guide claimed to be al-Mahdi and garnered a large following. Al-Imam al-Muttaqi al-Hindi left him, and this shows that a person should never blind follow even his spiritual guide. In creed, in aqaid, there is no blind faith. In creed, he left this spiritual guide and he migrated to Makkah al-Mukarramah. In Makkah al-Mukarramah, he wrote a book in refutation of those who claim to be al-Imam al-Mahdi, the false claimants. So this is an old phenomenon, something that was known in previous times. What occurred more recently was with Gohar Shahi. Gohar Shahi, if you watch some of his early videos, he was a proponent of Tasawwuf, of Sufism also. And he would claim that what you do is that you place the naqsh, the form of Allah, in your heart, you imprint it in your heart, and initially you do dhikrullah, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you even abandon the outward sharia initially, so the salah and other things, and then finally you even abandon dhikrullah with the tongue. So you have dhikrullah only inside of the heart. This was his initial claims of tasawwuf, of Sufism. A bit like this man in Pakistan, they have now, they have another one, La Thani Sarkar. Yes? I mean, La Thani Sarkar, they have another one in Pakistan. He doesn't claim prophethood, but he claims a special status that there's La Thani for him, there's no second for him. These type of titles they take. So, Gohar Shai started like this, and then he even visited the UK. And after visiting the UK, he placed some of his followers, meaning he converted some people and planted seeds for a following in certain parts of the UK. He went to Manchester, to London, he even went to America, and then he finally died in London in the late 90s. He died in London. Now, when he died, his followers said that he would be resurrected after so many days, after 40 days, and of course he was not resurrected. And since that day he has died, he still has some following on the internet, and this is a way of converting people by making them watch these type of videos in order to convert them. Now this was al-Mahdi claimant, a Mahdi claimant, and he made additional claims also, but initially he was a Mahdi claimant. They even claimed that his face, the figure of his face is on the moon, and what they would do is A4 sheets of paper, they would print out pictures of the moon, and there was some coloring on the moon, meaning dark coloring, and they would say this is the face of Gohar Shai on the moon, and likewise on Al-Hajar al-Aswad, on the black stone, they said the form of his face is on Al-Hajar al-Aswad, the black stone. Of course, these were claims that they made without any foundations. So how would a person, a common Muslim, be able to make a distinction? Firstly, I've mentioned in sufficient detail how to make a distinction between the finality of prophethood and those false claimants of prophethood. But how does one make a distinction between claimants of Mahdiism and the real Al-Imam al-Mahdi? And this is something very important, because there are even people in certain Sufi cults that privately they may say that their Shaykh and guide is the Mahdi, or potentially the Mahdi, or his son is the Mahdi. And I've heard these things from some of them, where they will point out a particular Shaykh al-Tariqa, a Shaykh guide of a Sufi order, and they will say this Shaykh is potentially al-Mahdi, or they will say his son or his progeny will potentially be al-Mahdi. How does one safeguard himself from this? The way of safeguarding oneself, before I move on to the third segment, is by knowing that the real Mahdi, Al-Imam al-Mahdi, whose name shall be Muhammad bin Abdullah, radiyallahu anhu, firstly, he will not be a manufactured entity. He shall appear when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills, organically, in a sense, in a series of events, that shall occur. But one of those events that shall occur before his appearance is that the Euphrates river shall dry before his appearance. And this is mentioned by Imam Muhammad bin Abd Rasul al-Barzanji. This falsifies the claims of those who every year make predictions that Al-Imam al-Mahdi shall appear this year, or he shall appear in the Hajj. This is a false claim, because the year and the time when Al-Imam al-Mahdi radiallahu anhu shall appear, firstly the Euphrates river prior to his appearance shall dry, and once it dries, a great war shall ensue. I have covered this in great detail in other lectures. But additional to this, an earthquake shall occur in the town of Harasta, which is near Damascus. The epicenter shall be Harasta, and from the earthquake, the wall of Al-Jami' al-Umawi, the western wall of Al-Jami' al-Umawi shall collapse. This is one of the signs of the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi. A third sign is the tyrant, the Sufyani, shall appear in Syria and rule for a year. But there are so many additional signs which are authentic, like the ruler of Syria at the time. This is in Sahih of Imam Bukhari. The ruler of Syria at that time shall send an army into Al-Madinatul Munawwara, similar to what Yazid did. What did Yazid do? Yazid sent a man called Muslim bin Uqba. What did he do? He went into Al-Harra, Sharqiyya, the eastern part, and he killed thousands and raped hundreds of women, meaning the army raped and pillaged, and 700 Sahaba were killed. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man akhafa ahl al-Madinah," whoever places terror inside of the people of Al-Madinatul Munawwara, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall make him melt, meaning with the punishment, like salt melts in water. So this event shall occur again at the hands of the ruler of Syria at that time. An army shall go into Al-Madinatul Munawwara. When they come out of Al-Madinatul Munawwara, they shall reach an area, a quicksand area. There are quicksands near Al-Madinatul Munawwara. They will be attempting to reach Makkah al-Mukarramah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall will that the quicksand swallows them up. And once they are swallowed, Nu'aym bin Hammad in Al-Fitan mentions one messenger shall go back to Al-Mahdi to inform him that their army was swallowed, and one messenger shall go to Sufyani to inform him that the army was swallowed. This is a clear sign of Imam al-Mahdi. An additional sign to that is that a caller shall call out, and this is mentioned in the Musannaf of Ibn Abi Shaybah, that a caller shall call out the name of Imam al-Mahdi, meaning an angel shall call out his name. Of course, there are other signs that he shall be from the Ashraf, from the progeny of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the lineage of Sayyidah Fatima radiyallahu anha. So, if a person is familiar with these signs, they can never be convinced by a claimant like Gohar Shahi or Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani. Now, what Mirza Ghulam did when these ahadith narrations were presented, one narration states that Isa bin Maryam alayhim as-salam shall descend in the eastern minaret of Damascus, the white eastern minaret. If Al-Jami' al-Umawi has a white minaret, that white minaret is the minaret in which Al-Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala wrote some parts of Ihya Ulumuddin. That minaret, many scholars say, is the minaret at which Isa alayhi salam shall descend. It is in the eastern part of Damascus. So what did Mirza Ghulam Ahmad say regarding this? He said eastern part of Damascus means the east of Damascus. If you draw a line east from Damascus, you reach India, and you reach Punjab, and you reach Qadian. So this was the distortion he did. And then what did he do? He had a minaret constructed in Qadian. Today, if you go onto YouTube and you watch their videos, you will find that they have a minaret constructed in the village of Qadian. And they are protected, by the way. The Qadiani sect is protected by the Israeli government. They are protected by the Indian government. They are not protected as a minority, they are protected as a political tool. So when Modi went to Israel, occupied Palestine, the first Indian president to do so. When he went, the delegation, the representative of the Muslims, according to them, was whom? No less than an adherent of the Qadiani faith, meaning what they call the Ahmadiyya movement. Why? Because the Babi faith, there's another false religion called the Babis, they are protected by the Israeli occupiers. Likewise, the Qadianiya, in order to undermine mainstream Muslims. So, these were the types of distortions Mirza Ghulam Ahmad made to the text. But this moves me to the third segment of my lecture. The third segment of my lecture is something which I studied for nearly a decade now. What is that? Why are people convinced by such claims? Meaning, after knowing rational and textual proofs, how can a person be convinced? There are obvious reasons like money, that some people, their faith can be bought out. So money is offered and they adopt a faith. Like many people do, what they do is when they want a British visa or a passport, they say we were victimized in Pakistan for being Qadiani. They adopt the Ahmadi religion, so-called Ahmadi religion, Qadiani religion, and when they adopt this, they abandon their religion for a worldly gain. These are obvious reasons. So this means people have a weak faith. But there is also the aspect which is overlooked, especially by Sufi circles, is the aspect of cult mind control. Now some people, they will say this thing regarding cult mind control, it is the domain of non-Muslim psychiatrists and therefore has no basis in Islam. The answer is this is false. Firstly, Islam placed so many principles of psychiatry. For instance, Ibn Sina, or I would say Muslims placed so many principles of psychiatry. Ibn Sina, if you read his works on psychology, there is an incident that occurred with him that a certain prince thought he was a goat. A mental illness. This happens. It's a mental health issue. There was a man I heard of who thought he was a tiger. Children may laugh at this, but it has serious consequences on the family and whatnot. When the young man thought he was a goat, Ibn Sina brought cabbage and lettuce, and so much lettuce that he made the young man eat lettuce and eat lettuce until he was cured. Meaning he had a method in tackling that psychological problem. The claimant of Mahdiism or the claimant of prophethood